Today, I want to talk to y'all about omens. The idea of omens honestly has kind of probably already been in many of y'all's minds. I know that it was in mine. I've, especially growing up as a Christian, I've always had this idea that God is speaking to me through the signs of the world, through everyday living that we go through and stuff like that. And I believe that no matter what religious background that you have, the idea of omens is something that could be prominent in your life. So whether you are a Muslim who believes in Allah, or whether you are a Buddhist, or whether you are a Christian, maybe even an atheist or an agnostic, I do believe that the idea of omens is something that can still help you make decisions throughout life and even just see like the beauty in life a lot of times. And so this idea, like I said, is not one that I believe is elusive to many, because I believe that we always kind of like look for red lights or red flags, for example, throughout life. Or maybe a lot of us don't really look out for red flags. We just always see the green flags, but that is also still an omen. And the first time that I actually heard this phrase, or probably like read this phrase, and actually thought about it, because it's a common phrasing that we hear oftentimes, like, oh, that's a good omen or that's a bad omen. I don't know about y'all, but it's something that I've heard a lot. But for me, when I had read the book The Alchemist this year, that was one of the concepts that they had talked about. They talked about the concept of a good omen and the concept of a bad omen. And it was even to the point where Santiago, who, by the way, I don't think there was enough information to find out what personality type that he was in the book. So I wasn't really able to, decipher that. However, I do believe that he was using a lot of the cognitive function NI, or introverted intuition, even if it may have not been in his original stacking, because I could also still see him as an ENFP, and maybe he was just using it as like one of his shadow functions or something like that. I don't know. I'm not saying he's an ENFP. I'm not saying that NI is not or is in his stacking. I'm just saying that like whatever NI is, he was using it here and there, just like we all use all of the functions eventually. But anyway, just as a side note. So Santiago, one of the omens that he was even using was two rocks that were given to him by Melchizedek, this kind of like Jesus-like figure in the story. And the two rocks were Urim and Thummim. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing those correctly, but in the book, pretty much he's given those two rocks, and one of them is black, the other one is white, and they're kind of like 8 balls, where pretty much he, whenever he would whenever he would ask them a question, and he didn't do it often, which was what he was told not to do, but whenever he started to have thoughts like, okay, what do I do? Like when he needed guidance, then he would ask a question to the rocks, and then he'd shift them in his pocket and pull out one of them. And whichever one that he'd pull out, then that's pretty much like the rocks saying yes or no to his question. So obviously he had to ask a yes or no question. So that was like one example of like omens from the book. And another example of omens that I saw from the book was at one point Santiago was out in the desert, and he saw 2 hawks, I believe, or some kind of bird. They were both flying around in a circle. And then next thing you know, one hawk attacked the other hawk. And just from seeing that in nature, all of a sudden he got this very overwhelming feeling that there was about to be war at the campsite that he was at. And he rushed back. He was very convicted by this intuitive feeling that he had, that he rushed back to the campsite, and he tried to find anybody to be able to tell him. And even when he was threatened with his life, And he was still kind of like, oh man, like, did I really see things? But for some reason, his intuition was really strong to him, telling him like, no, like, this is going to happen. Then he said he stood by it. And so, yeah, those are just a couple of examples from the book, at least. But in this video, I'm going to be talking about some that we could even see like in real life. You know, maybe we might not see hawks actually like flying around and then fighting each other, and then want to go tell our current president at the time that, hey, yo, we're about to be hit with missiles or something like that. Probably not. But there are other types of omens that I believe that we can see throughout everyday life. And I just want us to be able to have the idea to look at them and be able to witness their majesty and, like, you know, I guess kind of like utilize them in our everyday lives to be able to keep us on a good path or to warn us of bad things that are coming up. So even before we get any further, I'd like to define what an omen is. So an omen, according to my dictionary app, is anything perceived or happening that is believed to portend a good or evil event or circumstance in the future. Portent. It could also be a prophetic significance or a presage. So whenever we think of, once again, the idea of good omens and bad omens, it's pretty much like, it's literally a good sign or a bad sign. So when we're going through life and we see maybe like a butterfly, for example, we could probably see that as like a good omen. Like, okay, that means that the path that I'm on is going to transform me in some way. This is going to be, you know, a good thing, you know, that I'm going through. But sometimes maybe if we are going through life and we're at a crossroads or something and kind of having like shifty thoughts about something, next thing you know, we see maybe a scorpion, you know, or a snake or something, then we could consider that to probably be a bad omen. Maybe even like a dead bird. It's like, I think that's a sign that whatever I'm about to be doing or whatever that I have been doing, whatever I've been involved in, is probably not something that I should be involved in. Now, of course, if you are a Christian or whatever faith that you believe, I personally think that it's best to make sure that you're interpreting these omens as accurately as possible, because I believe that sometimes we can misinterpret them, just like, because, you know, they're very abstract in nature and stuff like that, and especially if you're not someone who's used to looking at the mundane and then making something grandiose out of it, you know, then you might be looking at it in a strange fashion that is probably not going to come at not only as naturally, but you might even like make something out of it than it really is, and that could be done in a harmful way. So I would recommend to make sure that you remain in like a prayerful state, so that whatever higher being that you have faith in, you can believe that that higher being is putting these omens in your way, and is speaking to you in the language that you would understand. Maybe other people, if they saw those hawks in the sky, they wouldn't have been able to understand it, but because Santiago had this attunement to the desert, they had this attunement with God, you know, he was able to identify the omen that God was placing before him, before, you know, like, you know, even without, you know, other people's help or being able to like, be there. And I feel like a lot of times, again, just personally speaking, I feel like God does speak to us in a fashion that we understand, and that other people might not understand. I believe that he understands the language that we speak. And so when we are looking for signs in everyday life and we are allowing ourselves to be quiet and still and meditative on nature itself and whatever might be around us, I believe that he does speak through the breeze and the wind, through dead animals that you might find like roadkill or something, through even other people, you know, I think that when we really pay attention to these things, then you can actually find a whole trail of omens that God is like guiding you with. And sometimes that's why it's really good to slow down, because if you're moving too fast, if you're being too loud, if you're having your life be too busy, you're gonna miss a lot of these things. Kirk Franklin tweeted back in 2011, I've always kept it since then. Today, listen for his soft voice. God doesn't yell because he refuses to compete with all the other voices in your life. Listen, then go. This is something that I've always tried to keep in mind. And this is why it's important, once again, to have that stillness. Now, again, whatever faith that you have, and that's definitely like, you. It's just one example. I think the overarching message, the overarching theme, no matter what faith that you have, is to be able to be still, to be able to allow yourself to be attentive to the world around you, because that's when you'll be able to make the most interpretation of the signs. And lastly, just based off of all of this, I wanted to dive into being able to read into things that might not even be there, because of course there is a rational side to even me that thinks, hey, what if this doesn't mean anything, and one example could be that from the movie Get Out, there is a scene in the movie where this racist girl is eating Fruit Loops, and as she's eating the Fruit Loops, then she takes a swig of her milk from separately, and everybody, kind of like interpreted that as like, oh, whoa, like, that's crazy. It's because she's racist, so she was separating the whites from the colors, when in actuality, the director of the movie came out one day, and of course he could have easily played along like, oh yeah, of course, I'm a genius like that, but he was honest, and he was like, actually, I was just trying to showcase how weird she was, but that works. And I feel like there's a lot of moments like that in life where we're trying to figure out, like, maybe like we're reading a poem, or maybe we're like reading a book or hearing someone speak, and we're thinking like, oh, okay, the author like really meant this, or the artist really meant this, or whatever. Do we really know for sure? Not really. But from being able to read into that, there wasn't a problem with assuming that, the creator, like, it wasn't off base to assume that the creator had separated the Fruit Loops from the milk because of that reason. And if you're able to identify certain things like that in life, then I feel like rarely will it be a problem as well, even if it's not necessarily intended by the illustrator. Granted, I do once again believe that if you have a personal relationship with the illustrator, he or she will speak to you in the manner that you best receive. And so that is something that I want to leave with you. Like, if you see a butterfly, for example, once again, could just be a regular good omen, but it could also be something, it could be the thing that makes you stop in your tracks and have this whole "that's so Raven" moment where you just start thinking about, wow, honestly, that butterfly, I wonder if it's a representation of me. I've been a caterpillar for so long, and I've been afraid to go into a cocoon, because in a cocoon state, I know that I have to do this on my own. We can't go into a cocoon and help the butterfly come out. The caterpillar has to go into the cocoon and isolate from people. And then it's the most restricting time of its life, because the caterpillar feels free. The caterpillar is able to go around everywhere that it wants. The caterpillar is able to hang out with its friends. But as soon as it gets in the cocoon, its friends can't come into the cocoon with it. It has to work on everything in itself. And on top of that, it has to stay stationary for so long. And that could get very boring. But then, once the caterpillar sees the butterfly, then it's like, wow, I thought I was free. But that is freedom, to be able to flutter anywhere that you want, at your own will. That is freedom. I want to get there one day. That level of beauty, the wings, the the majesty that a butterfly holds. And that butterfly went through the cocoon stage. But I bet that that butterfly would tell me that that cocoon stage was 1000% worth it, and it has no regrets and would do it all over again just to have that final result of being able to fly the way that it does. And that it's in a much better position than it was when it was a caterpillar. Now, what does that say about you? That's an omen. So, that's just one example of many. You can look at the bricks of a house and be able to think about that. You can read a story, be able to think about the meaning behind that. Watch something on TV and just something quickly catches your eye. Big meaning from there. So, tell me what y'all think. Drop down any omens that y'all happen to think of or that y'all happen to find throughout your everyday life. And I read all the comments. I'm still trying to find time to be able to like create content, consume content, because I think that as a content creator, you have to consume a lot. Plus, of course, I'm coaching and everything like that. But I do always try to like comment back to all of my comments eventually, even if it's months later. A lot of you have noticed, like, whoa, Denzel, like, I didn't think you'd respond. Like, it's been like 8 months. It's like, yeah, I'm sorry, but I really do appreciate y'all's comments. So be sure to like, subscribe, comment if y'all have anything. And also, like I said, I'm a coach. Check out the details in the description if you guys are considering coaching, and I'd be more than happy to let you guys. I'd be more than happy to coach you all. I'm also going to be soon offering some new packages, which still in the making, but I'm thinking of an NFJ, kind of like camp or kind of like a course. It's still being created right now, but just something to kind of like throw out there in the radar. It might happen soon, it might happen next year, but I would like for this to be like a really good thing. So yeah, check it out. Thank y'all for enjoying or watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and